Well, 2 months on from the election, almost 4 months since the Parliament last sat in Canberra. Tomorrow, the 47th Commonwealth Parliament will be officially opened by the Governor-General. 35 new MPs will take their seats and we'll all then start to see the Albanese government's real political agenda to get across what's coming our way. I'm joined now by Dennis Shanahan, National Editor at The Australian. Dennis, I won't ask you how many parliaments you've been there to see the opening of, but we know tomorrow's a whole lot of ceremony, a lot of official speeches, veritable afternoon teas all around the building. Lots of families come to town, of course. We've seen some set-piece comments fed out of a Labor caucus meeting today. The Prime Minister saying, we're not going to waste a moment of government. We've got this legislation coming on. You've got the 43% emissions target. That'll be a challenge for the coalition. Aged care reform, paid domestic violence leave, this new jobs agency. I've made the point they were small targeted in the campaign, but they're anything but small target now.
Indeed, Peter. And look, the Prime Minister, and just in relation to your earlier query, Anthony Albanese is the 10th Prime Minister moving into the chair that I've covered over the years. And he is exercising his right as a newly elected Prime Minister to claim a mandate for his government. He's set out quite a comprehensive list of changes. Of course, the top is the 43% reduction in carbon emissions, but there's also family domestic violence leave. And he says up to 18 pieces of legislation that he wants to get into the Parliament as soon as possible. Now, this is all well and good for the Prime Minister, and we'd wish him well with the success of his legislation. But we have seen in the past that no matter what the mandate has been, there have been challenges to the new government's legislative agenda. On this case, the 43% reduction is going to face pressure from the Greens and the so-called Teal independents who want to push the reductions higher than 43%. So that's the first fight that Anthony Albanese is going to have there. He's tried to accommodate the Teals to a degree, allowing through the parliamentary procedures and Tony Burke as Leader of the House to enable the Teals to actually have their maiden speeches before they actually debate on the carbon emissions legislation. So he's trying to give a bit there, but overall what we are going to see tomorrow is all the pomp and ceremony of flying flags and the Governor-General expected at any minute, cannons that will send my dog Biff into the backyard. But what the big risk for Anthony Albanese is that this big agenda that he's now putting up could be derailed by an event outside his control, as was the case with John Howard. 6 weeks into a new government, after 10 years of Labor government, and the Port Arthur massacre derailed the coalition's agenda and turned gun reforms into the priority. So what we're actually seeing now is the chance that the economy will actually overshadow and the inflation rate, this agenda that Anthony Albanese has so optimistically put forward.
Look, the story of the election campaign, in part, given the Prime Minister only got 3 out of 10 Australians voting for him, so good luck with the mandate argument. Tony Abbott had a mandate with a landslide in 2013 to scrap a carbon tax. Labor didn't support that. Obviously, you'll remember that in that parliament at the time. But the story of the election was, I think, the Teal independents. They've been pretty good on the whinge lately. They haven't been happy about their staff. Their point about the maiden speeches, of course, it used to be the practice that you gave your first speech inside a piece of legislation. So I don't know what they're complaining about. But nonetheless, the government's given them what they wanted. But given the government is now a majority government, there'll be a bit of colour and movement, and I know lazy journalists will pick up the phone and get a story from them every once in a while, but they won't have much influence, will they, Dennis?
No, not in the House, and the coalition's perfectly justified in its opposition to the 43% cut. I might add that Anthony Albanese has made the point that the vast majority of Australians voted for parties at the last election with targets with a maximum of 43% reduction by 2030, and that this fallacy that the Teals and Greens have some sort of a mandate, less than 10% of the elected members of the House of Representatives represent a target of more than 43%. So let's get rid of that idea. But look, I think that Anthony Albanese will face pressure in the Senate. But again, we've seen there that the Teals, David Pocock, indicating that while on the climate change, of course, he's going to stick with the rest, but on the question of the Building Commission, the ABCC, he may actually change his mind on that. So all of these things can change. There could be an outbreak of foot and mouth. Let's hope not, but there could be. All of these things can affect the agenda of a new government.
Talk to me about inflation, because I think you're absolutely right. It'll be the economic narrative over the next 12 months at least. We know on Thursday we're getting an economic update from the Treasurer. This is not the budget. The budget will come in October. Inflation's set to hit a 32-year high, we're told. We're going to get the latest CPI data on Wednesday from the Bureau of Statistics. If I was back in the PMO right now in the Prime Minister's office, I'd tell you the economic circumstances, the economic climate would be my fixation.
Well, I think that's probably pretty right at this week. On Wednesday, the first day we'll have a question time. There won't be a question time tomorrow. The first time that we actually have a question time, there will be the release of what is expected to be at least a 30-year high in inflation. And we know that Jim Chalmers, as Treasurer, is trying to jolt the public on what is going to be a dire prediction about the economy in the future. Jim Chalmers, after years of preconditioning with the electorate, with low interest rates and pandemic spending, unprecedented spending over a period of 3 years, Jim Chalmers has to try and pull people's realisation back to the old rules about budget deficits and national debt. And this is going to be a very tough call for the Treasurer. He has to try and maintain an optimism for business, but he also has to talk about the reality. And this is where the economy will be more important this week and grab more attention from the public than the Prime Minister's own legislative agenda.